One, a modern-day revival. Hundreds of thousands meet in Arizona while millions watch online in a memorial for Charlie Kirk. While the ugliest souls among us describe it as a Nazi rally and suggest Charlie Kirk should be left to the dustbin of history. A tale of two worlds. Two, President Trump says he hates his opponent. We break it down with Wade Stotts, the host of The Wade Show with Wade Stotts. Three, only a few civilizations have been obliterated from this earth. Cultures lost. People scattered to the wind. Civilizations raised. Which today are under the greatest threat? With Victor Davis Hanson. It is Will Cain country on this Monday, a day after a beautiful Sunday, a revival Sunday, a remarkable and historical Sunday. Hundreds of thousands in Arizona at State Farm Stadium gathered to honor the late Charlie Kirk, assassinated by a young man, the exact type of young man described by his wife, Erica Kirk, as the type of young man that was not outside the reach of Charlie Kirk, the type of young man that he was hoping to reach. In one of the most poignant moments of the day, in an impossible task, Erica Kirk took to the stage and forgave Tyler Robinson.
Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do. That man, that young man, I forgive him.
It is so full of grace. It is so impossible. I know it's not impossible with fidelity and love for Jesus Christ, but it's so impossible on a personal level. It's so hard to put yourself in that position and to come out with some similar level of grace. Just can you imagine? Can you imagine someone taking the life of your wife, your husband, your son, and within days turn and forgive that young man? It not only speaks to the character of Erica Kirk, but it speaks to the love and the lessons of Jesus Christ. And it paints a picture, when you see the reaction on the very same day across social media, on the airwaves at CNN, of two different souls, of two different worlds. Let's get into that with story number one. At the same time, hundreds of thousands mourn in person and millions watch online, and you see perhaps one of the greatest displays of grace, of forgiveness, of the love of God. There, from the stage honoring Charlie Kirk, you saw on the airways of CNN and across social media people like Representative Omar of Minnesota, who said that Charlie Kirk was better left to the dustbin of history.
But I am not going to sit here and be judged for not wanting to honor any legacy this man has left behind. That should be in the dustbin of history, and we should hopefully move on and forget the hate that he spewed every single day.
But you will, Representative Omar. You will sit there and be judged, and I think that judgment will be harsh. I think that judgment will be the majority. I do believe that it is you who will be in the dustbin of history. I do believe that America is better than you, Representative Omar. Unfortunately, she was not alone in this ugliness of the soul. She's not alone in this darkness. Quite bluntly, she's not alone in this evil. YouTuber Destiny posted on X, this Charlie Kirk memorial is indistinguishable from a Nazi rally, and F anyone who wants to pretend that it's not. I want to start responding to this post by simply apologizing to the audience, because some months ago we invited here on to Will Cain Country Destiny. We had him in studio in New York, and we had a conversation, largely which was polite and largely which was maybe even somewhat productive. We talked about our disagreement. Oh, we debated. We did it, I think, in the spirit and style of Charlie Kirk. Like Charlie, I do enjoy the exchange of ideas, and I do believe there are a couple of outcomes, all of which are positive, when you debate with someone whom you disagree. My frenemy on First Take, Max Kellerman, used to say that when it comes to debate, one of two things happen. Number one, I'm wrong and I get more educated, or number two, I'm proven correct, both of which are positive outcomes. I'm not sure what there was in retrospect to learn from someone who has as dark a soul as Destiny. If his soul isn't dark, if he doesn't mean his words, he's simply given into the darkness of the attention economy. Look at me, look at me, look at me. No matter how ugly he has to be in order for someone to look at him. It's hard to reconcile, actually, the man who sat with us that day from the one that sits here on social media and posts something like this, that it is akin to a Nazi rally. I ask you, and I think this is the final debate point. I don't even think there's much place to go after the answer to this question. How many fascists gave the microphone to their opponent? But this is the game that is being played. Rewriting the persona, the character, the legacy of Charlie Kirk. And when you listen to someone like Representative Ilhan Omar, she's not just supported by oozy, slimy, attention-seeking dark souls like Destiny. She's supported by others popularly elected within their district to represent them in the halls of Congress, like Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett.
A resolution that came before the House this past week honoring Charlie Kirk. And there were 58 Democrats who voted against it. You were one.
Yeah.
Why?
Absolutely. You know what? One of the things I do want to point out that's not been laid out that honestly hurts my heart is when I saw the no votes, there were only 2 Caucasians. For the most part, the only people that voted no were people of color.
This game is up. This jig is up. This game is over. This racializing of America, it's finished. There's no tolerance. There's no patience anymore. Oh, not with the vast majority of America. Maybe you can still find your 10%. But this is done. And it's done, A, because it's inaccurate, because it's false, because we're not a society full of bigots. But B, because the good people of America are worn out on your dance. They're worn out on your performance. This little act. This little play to the cheapest of seats. It's much more powerful today and yesterday to watch as Vice President J.D. Vance speaks in front of millions and hundreds of thousands in person and identifies what we saw yesterday in Arizona for what it was. It wasn't just a memorial for Charlie Kirk. No, it was a modern-day revival of Christianity.
You know, I can't help but think that they tried to silence my friend Charlie Kirk. They tried to silence our dear friend Charlie Kirk. And tonight, we speak with Charlie and for Charlie louder than ever. The evil murderer who took Charlie from us expected us to have a funeral today, and instead, my friends, we have had a revival in celebration of Charlie Kirk and of his Lord Jesus Christ.
Look at these two worlds. Compare these two worlds. Compare the spirit, the rhetoric, the attitude in the last 48 hours between those who saw one of their favorites gunned down and those who refuse to stand against political violence. When a drug addict, high on fentanyl, a career criminal with not only drug charges but assault, battery, attacking a pregnant woman, died on the streets of Minnesota, entire cities across this country burned. Riots from coast to coast. A national conversation about everything from our statues to our syrup. About what we would name, what we would honor, how would we talk. We did away with the idea of a master bedroom. We fired professors and play-by-play announcers for saying all lives matter. We canceled numerous, not just people with a microphone, but private citizens who dared to ask for the truth when it came to race in America. And we elevated the race mongers. They got multi-million-dollar contracts from Spotify. They were given book deals. They remain today famous. All because George Floyd died while in custody of law enforcement, as most facts point to, from a drug overdose. But when Charlie Kirk is assassinated and shot in the throat, murdered for his beliefs in front of thousands, doing the one thing we ask everybody to do, not just debate, but in the trite and cliched term, have the conversation. You saw no such violence. You saw no such riots. You saw no much destruction. You saw a revival. You saw the biggest spirit and outpouring of Christianity in this country, perhaps in a century. You saw the best of everyone. You're tempted to point to the stage and see speaker after speaker, from the Secretary of War to D&I, from the Vice President to the President, publicly profess their devotion to God. But more importantly, you saw people living the thing that Charlie Kirk said he would want to be remembered for, his faith. You saw the hundreds of thousands there in Arizona. And if you haven't been out in this country, whether or not you've been to a college campus or anywhere where you've interacted with young people, you've seen the brave display, the wearing on their sleeve of who they are, and who they are is goodness. Let it be dismissed as fascism. Let it be dismissed as Christian nationalism. Let it even be dismissed as racism. Because these voices are playing a game that is over for the vast majority of America. It is a tale of two worlds, but I have to believe this world of absurdity, insanity, evil, darkness, and ugly souls appeals to fewer and fewer people after what you could compare yesterday to, once again, for example, another elected member of Congress, AOC.
We should be clear about who Charlie Kirk was. A man who believed that the Civil Rights Act that granted Black Americans the right to vote was a mistake. Who, after the violent attack on Paul Pelosi, claimed that, quote, some amazing patriot, unquote, should bail out his brutal assailant. And accused Jews of controlling, quote, not just the colleges, it's the nonprofits, it's the movies, it's Hollywood, it's all of it, unquote.
That is from the floor of Congress. And while I haven't looked into every single thing she seems to be quoting, I'm almost certain, I'd place large bets that every single thing she said there is false, because that's the game they're playing today. Reframe Charlie Kirk and who he was in his life. Take snippets, take him out of his context. One of my favorite things you're seeing across social media is that, which we did last week here on Will Cain Country. Go back and get that Wednesday episode. Wednesday or Thursday of last week, we took the quote-unquote greatest hits that the left is playing of Charlie Kirk, all of the slander, and played it in full context. You can get that, by the way, by subscribing at Spotify and Apple, or just making sure you're there on the Will Cain Country YouTube channel. Bookmark it, subscribe, and you'll get that. And you can see, when it's placed into full context, exactly what Charlie had to say. And one of my favorite things now since then is you've seen these social media posts of at least someone who purports to be black on X. At this point, I don't know who's what anymore on social media. Like, what's authentic and what is fake. But say, I've spent, as many people have, this has happened over the past 2 weeks, people that were somewhat familiar with Charlie Kirk, diving into his library, watching what he had to say. And one of my favorites is to see black posters go, I've now spent several days digging into Charlie Kirk, and I haven't heard one racist word. Not one. Not one when it's put into full context and you hear what he's talking about. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a 50-50 proposition. Does AOC, is she just ignorant? And I mean that in full terms of ignorance. Like, she doesn't literally know. She lives in that epistemic bubble of the left where all she's ever gotten is the out-of-context clips and quotes. Look, you can't underestimate how many people live in that world. You really can't. Like, they don't really have any knowledge. They don't have any insight on any of the things that they talk about. They only have the out-of-context ignorance. It creates this epistemic bubble. You want the best example of that right now? You want the best example of that bubble? I believe I saw a poll this morning. Only 10% of Democrats think that Charlie Kirk's murderer was from the left. Something like 30 to 40% believe he came from MAGA. Now, how would you have that impression? Only by living in that bubble. Of course, it's completely counterfactual. It's false. It's disturbingly ignorant, but they blissfully live in this ignorance. So I don't know if that's AOC, or in the alternative, she's simply a dark soul willing to peddle in the lies in order to, quote unquote, not just defeat her enemy on the public stage, but to give in to the darkness, to be evil. But, I really do believe that that's becoming so transparent, so obvious that it's appeal and persuasion. While there's those people that live in that, I hate to use that word again, but epistemic bubble. That means a certain, worldview and set of thoughts, really narrowly defined, echoed and repeated inside of a bubble so that you can live in an alternate reality. But I think it's getting smaller because it's not just transparently false. When you see, that wasn't a MAGA revival yesterday. That was an American revival. And if you doubt that, here's my challenge. Go out into America. Just go out into America. I was at the gym this morning. Guy that I know, an acquaintance, friendly, wearing the white shirt with freedom in black letters across his chest. The one that Charlie Kirk was wearing when he was killed. We're not talking about simply people that went to Donald Trump rallies. We're talking about America. And maybe I'm the optimist. I don't know. But you see yesterday, and I think it speaks. I think it speaks loudly. Sustainability will always be the question. Does it sustain? Does it last? Is it going to be something that we can count on to see in 5 years, 10 years? But I think the answer is yes. And I think not only the transparency of the falsehood of the other side of the equation, but the obvious ugliness of destiny, of AOC, the obvious darkness in the soul of Omar and Crockett appeals to fewer and fewer people. Because on the other hand, you can simply see these kinds of messages. My friend, Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth.
My pastor texted me the day after that horrific event and said, Pete, the devil overplayed his hand. Charlie started with liberty, but ended up lighting our country on fire for Christ. He started Turning Point USA, but this moment is the turning point for the USA.
I think this is a moment. I really do believe it is a turning point. Not only because Charlie was so influential, not only because of the positivity and amazing inspiration we saw from yesterday, but because those others are so nakedly, transparently, at this point, ugly. Let's get into some of this. Plus, Donald Trump's admission, not like Charlie Kirk, I hate my opponent. Is that the right path? With Wade Stotts coming up on Will Cain Country. From a tale of two worlds to a tale of two paths, set aside as most of the country has done, Omar, AOC, and Crockett. What's the right path? Charlie and Erica Kirk or President Donald Trump? It is Will Cain Country, streaming live at the Will Cain Country YouTube channel. Hey, hit bookmark, subscribe, and like, and that way you can hang out with us every Monday through Thursday, or get it on demand whenever you like by following on Spotify or on Apple. Erica Kirk was talking about her husband's assassin, Tyler Robinson, and said this was the exact type of young man that was in the targets, not of a bullet, but in persuasion, in conversion, for Charlie Kirk.
He wanted to save young men, just like the one who took his life.
On the other hand, President Donald Trump took the stage in the finale of yesterday's memorial, and he said, you know, what he always does, his mind, authentically, probably off script, but he let it fly.
In that private moment on his dying day, we find everything we need to know about who Charlie Kirk truly was. He was a missionary with a noble spirit and a great, great purpose. He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica. But now Erica can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent.
Let's break it down with the host of The Wade Show. With Wade, it is Wade Stotts here on Will Cain Country. What's up, Wade?
It's great to be here, Will. Thank you so much.
Which path, man? Which path?
Yeah.
The path of Charlie and Erica Kirk or the path of Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think that these two are basically, at some level, trying to do what their job is. So I see Erica as doing the Christian duty of someone who's been wronged, which is saying, I'm not going to hold bitterness. I'm going to work. I'm going to continue the effort that Charlie started. And I see Trump saying, I'm not going to let this go. So I think that both of them have to do, basically I think what they're telling us is what their plans are. So their attitudes and their hearts reveal what they're going to do. And I think I want Trump to be the guy who says, we're not going to let go of this, and we're going to keep pushing on it, and we're going to make sure that this kind of thing can't happen again. I want a president that says that kind of thing. And I want him, I'm okay with him doing the right thing, even out of the wrong motives. And I'm okay with, and again, Erica, as you said so well, showed the Christian virtue of, again, letting go of bitterness, being free from bitterness, because that allows her to act with a lot more moral clarity. We want Trump to be the hammer, and we also recognize that Trump is not the picture that Charlie Kirk was, and I think that's okay, and I think it's okay, especially right now. But yeah, I wish that Trump would be able to let go of bitterness, but also be able to execute justice. We can do both of those things at the same time. But again, I'm okay with Trump holding a little bit of, holding this against the people who did it in at least a legal way.
Let's explore that in at least a legal way. You said, Donald Trump, you're okay with doing the right thing with the wrong motive, and you described him as a hammer. So what is the right thing, and what does he need to hammer?
Well, I think that the way that they've already gone about this is good. They've got the guy. And I don't see them lightening his sentence. That's their prerogative, right? They have the ability, now that they've turned it into a federal case, they have the prerogative to decide what the sentencing is. And I think it's worth considering. Okay, do we lighten this for reasons? We could have reasons for lightening this. I don't think that the reasons for lightening the sentence would be valid reasons. I think that he individually needs to become a symbol of, we're not going to allow this to happen again. Let the full consequences come down. I also think that the way that they're addressing the overall leftist culture is the right way to do it. And I hope that they push even further on that. Despite what we've heard, there is a well-funded left-wing terror network that operates, and it's not just the funding, it's also the cultural network that's been allowed to thrive in these Discord servers and also in mainstream media. Everything, all the darkness that people talk about in these Discord servers and all these other chat avenues has been encouraged at the highest level, not just by media personalities, but also by sitting Congress people, as you said well. This culture of justifying violence. Another clip from Jasmine Crockett that she didn't play was when she said, "How am I supposed to condemn the death of someone who criticized me?" Which translated means, if you criticize me, you deserve to die. That's not something, I think Crockett is useful because she says all of the things that Democrats won't say. She's just dumb enough to say them out loud. And I think that that's the spirit that's animating the Democratic Party. It's not just a fringe little group over there, maybe on a Discord server. These are the people who followed the arguments of the people in power for the last few decades to their logical conclusions. The people who have justified this need to be held accountable, not just by voters, but also by official means. I don't think that we can necessarily just count on, I love the American people, obviously, but these people have won enough converts within the American people to continue to have some amount of elected power. I think that needs to be slowed down. These people need to be censured. Some people need to be deported. I think that people need to be denaturalized for calling for and justifying violence in a country that they have moved to and been accepted in freely. So there are lots of avenues that I think need to be gone down, but I think that Trump, again, is headed in the right direction. I hope that he has the courage, and even if it is a little bit of hatred in his heart that animates those efforts, I think I'm okay with seeing that. Even if I wish Donald Trump was the perfect Christian statesman, I think that the actions need to take place either way.
Okay, let's analyze that into three different components, three different parts that you just discussed on where to bring down the hammer, and I want to focus in on one of them. So first, Tyler Robinson was the first focus of your hammer, and I agree, and I doubt that the justice system will find any leniency to offer to Tyler Robinson. He can find that forgiveness if he so seeks it in the afterlife, but in this life he will face justice. In the second part, you talk about the wider cultural left. I want to also separate that into two components: the online ugliness, the Discord chats, the servers, the social media platforms that have enabled a lot of this conversation. I think there's probably some legitimate policing that can go on, meaning the power of the government to investigate, surveil, and crack down on some of that. But the second component is just the broader rhetoric of the left in the wide culture. And, we can, I think maybe even one of the best examples of that is I saw that the pop artist Pink over the weekend and into late last week was posting some very, very ugly things about Charlie and his death and those that mourn his death. So I think that's a category to analyze essentially as a placeholder, someone like Pink. But then the third category is the elected officials. So we'll start there and back into the broader culture. You talked about Ilhan Omar, essentially, I believe. You kind of accepted Jasmine Crockett. There's also AOC. These are elected officials in America who have taken up the rhetoric and so forth that has, I agree with you, encouraged violence. So speak with more specificity, because you alluded. You think Omar, for example, should be denaturalized, should be deported?
I do. I think that it's responsible, and I think it's not something that sort of matches the manners that we've grown up with. And I think but what we're realizing now is that the manners that we grew up with are designed to inculcate and to propagate this exact kind of thing. This is a result of saying it's okay if, as long as you come here and you take the test, then you can do whatever you want once you get here. That I think is a problem, and I think it also she took 2 oaths, right? So as she came here as an American citizen and was naturalized, and she also took her oath of office. These 2 oaths should be taken seriously. These are not just niceties that people do. Sadly, it became that way. But we shouldn't take those oaths as being anything less than commitments with themselves to act in accordance with that oath. And if we take those oaths seriously, we have to say that this is not the kind of thing that we can encourage. This is not the kind of environment that people can have. America is a certain thing. It's a place where we want Americans to live and thrive, and we should not allow elected representatives to, or any kind of citizen, to justify and especially naturalized citizens, justify the murder of a leading political figure, and not only a leading political figure, basically someone who was de facto a part of the administration. This is not somebody going off into a Discord chat and maybe having some transgressive historical ideas or having a take on something, which is the way that Britain is basically running their government. If you see a social media post or you like a social media post that they don't think that you should have, then they're going to go after you. That's a different sort of thing. And that liking those social media posts are typically about immigration and saying, oh, I wish that the government would do something about immigration. That is a legitimate political opinion, and I would say it's a correct one. But we have to be okay with judging between acceptable and unacceptable, and what is the center of America and what is the periphery. And so there's a center, there's a periphery, and then there's something that's in contradiction to the core of what American life is. And Ilhan Omar should not be comfortable saying this stuff. I grew up in a time where conservatives, Christians, were at some level ashamed to state their own beliefs in public. And I think that it's okay to say that the shoe should be on the other foot, that the left, who has justified all sorts of evil and continues to justify evil and perpetrates all sorts of evil, should be ashamed to say those sorts of things. There are opinions that are shameful, and there are opinions that are normal.
Okay, this is a broader conversation that I want to get into then. What I agree with is your diagnosis. I don't necessarily, as of yet, even disagree with your prescription, but I am worried about that prescription. So what I mean is this. You heard me in my monologue say, I do believe, and I don't think it's just the optimist in me, that the point of view espoused by someone like Ilhan Omar or Jasmine Crockett does not speak to the majority of Americans. And I don't know how much. What I don't know is how much it speaks to the majority of Democrats. Unfortunately, I think it speaks for the majority of Democrats, meaning they don't have a rational voice that says something vastly different at this point. But poll man on the street Democrat, I still have some retention of hope that they hear that and are disgusted by someone like Ilhan Omar. And it's because, as you point out, it's not only fringe, it is subversive to the idea of America. Like, you are someone advocating for ideas and now, honestly, actions that undercut the experiment of America. You don't have a legitimate place in this conversation. And so, Wade, I like Charlie Kirk, really enjoy the idea of an exchange of ideas, of debate, right? But what I've come to realize, you have to be very selective about who that's going to be with, because there's nothing to be valued or gained from, for example, a debate with Jasmine Crockett, unless it's simply going to be for sport, for destruction, for sport. But she's not going to be persuaded. She's not trying to persuade. She is simply trying to subvert the concept of America. And I agree with you on that. But the issue of what to do about them, okay, this is the challenge. And this is why I think you've seen someone, I think Tucker Carlson even came out and was upset with Brendan Carr and the FCC about the rhetoric before the Jimmy Kimmel suspension. And it comes down to this. What happens when the shoe is on the other foot? And this is the game of power. This is the trade-off in power, right? What if you play a game, what happens if you pull a gun, what happens when your opponent has that gun, right? And I had this debate last week on the Will Cain show with Brad Palumbo, who's a libertarian, and his example to me was, what if the Biden administration's FCC went after talk radio, whatever that talk radio may be, Fox News Radio, the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show, any of the number of successful conservative shows on FCC-regulated bandwidth, right? That's what radio is, FCC-regulated bandwidth, and said, well, it doesn't represent a diversity of views. It's not representative of America, and so we're going to go after you. So my question then is, diagnosis correct, does the prescription not set you up for the gun being in someone else's hand?
Certainly. I wouldn't want those things to happen, obviously, but I don't think that a hypothetical situation, I don't think that the left going after conservatives is a hypothetical situation. What the issue is are we allowed to return fire? And that's a a question that, again, people have debated over the course of history. But I think that the historical answer that is correct is yes, it's okay to turnabout is fair play. There's a reason that's a cliche. And I wouldn't want to say that because the left gets to do things that are evil, therefore we get to do things that are evil. What I would say is that if they use something that is not for its intended purpose, then we're okay to use it for its intended purpose. And I believe that the intended purpose of the FCC, the FCC exists for a reason. So we shouldn't think that the FCC doesn't get to do any kind of job at all. Its job is not just to sit back and let everything happen. They have a legitimate authority, and using that legitimate authority for the truth, right, is very different from using it for lies. I'm okay with people using it for truth and not for lies. I'm not a moral relativist, right? So I don't see, okay, this person did this, therefore it's okay for me to do it. But if you're in the middle of something that is a fight, and that is a fight between what I believe is good and evil, it's okay to fight the evil. And I don't think that it's the case that we're firing the first shot.
I totally agree. But the challenge is, Wade, like a lot of the things that you're saying, like a legitimate use of it or truth versus falsehood is objectively, you and I know what those things are and we agree. The problem is in the broader scope of American consciousness, those things are subjective, meaning he with the power decides. And that's been the debate on free speech from the beginning. Do I enjoy every piece of speech that's ever uttered out there? No, I don't. I mean, I want some, just like every human who has that instinct, I want people to shut up. But the problem is, and I'm not talking about the FCC because I agree with you on your analysis of literally the application of the FCC in this situation. But I'm talking about the broader returning of fire, right? Is what happens when it's Nina Jankowicz who's deciding what's legitimate? What happens when it's Nina? You remember Nina Jankowicz, the Department of Ministry of Truth or whatever lady?
Sadly, I do. Yes.
They tried to set up under the Biden administration. What happens when she's deciding what is truth?
Right. I think that the issue is that yes, that would be a bad thing, and that should be resisted at every level. The problem though is that we shouldn't be afraid to. In the same way that we shouldn't think that the left is the only one who's okay with defining what's true and what's false. So what they have a very clear moral vision as to what's good, what's true, what's beautiful, and they are okay with enforcing that. The right cannot answer that back with relativism in terms of truth, but it can say that there is a certain range of debate that is acceptable and that is good. Defining that range of debate is what power is, and it's what cultural power is, and it's also what political power is. Speech, I understand, but yeah. I wouldn't want to use speech laws or free speech as a sort of wedge to create a culture of moral relativism within the right. I think that's happened over the course of several years, and I think that would continue to be a mistake, especially as we have legitimate authority to fight that sort of stuff.
And that's the challenge. And this is where I was in my monologue, and we'll move to the broader culture quickly here together. But I have no doubt in the truth, I really don't, in the truth that what you're hearing from Jasmine Crockett, what you're hearing from Ilhan Omar is even beyond fringe. It is illegitimate political conversation in my definition of what is legitimate or illegitimate. Advocation for violence, refusal to condemn violence, undercutting the experiment of the United States of America, saying we're a flawed state, saying we were born from sin, so forth. Looking to replace it with something else, and I don't think those two share necessarily the same vision. Truth is, no progressives share the same vision. They don't. They don't all share the same vision of what the future should be. They just know they should disrupt and destroy what currently is. But what to do about it is the challenge. And then that takes me to the broader culture. And that broader culture is, back to Pink. Pink being so ugly, the pop, quote-unquote, star, right? And so many on the left. I do trust in this way that speech is actually your friend. Like, I think that America is looking at all of this, and I do think they are rejecting it. Like, I am not with Pink. I am not with AOC. I am not with these people There will always be a percentage that is, but I think that percentage is getting smaller, Wade. I don't think it's a 51-49 proposition. And maybe that's what I take from yesterday. Like, yesterday actually spoke to, I feel like, what could potentially be 60% of America, 65% of America.
I totally agree. I think that along with, I don't want to say that the only solution here is an official sort of government solution. I think that's legitimate. But overall, broadly, the culture needs to be led and people don't need to feel alone. And that leading can come from the government. It could also come from leading cultural figures. The thing that happened yesterday was that the government figures and leading cultural figures said, this is where we're going. And we're making this movement. This movement will become in the image of Charlie Kirk. And that's again, just a cultural statement. People can get on board with that. What I can see, though, is we've got a difference between Pink, this horrible thing that Pink is doing, and also Chris Pratt, right? So Chris Pratt, at some level, he feels comfortable to say, Charlie Kirk shouldn't have been murdered. It's a horrible thing that happened. That's him at some level testing the waters. If it's okay for him to say more. He got plenty of backlash. I think Zachary Levi has had similar experiences. What I want, though, and I think that we're headed in that direction, is for those roles to be reversed. So the role of Chris Pratt shouldn't be ashamed to say everything he has to say about the Charlie Kirk assassination. And Zachary Levi should be okay with saying everything he has to say. Pink should be the one who's nervous.
Very well said. You know where I've seen some of most of that? We'll leave it here, Wade, but I think I've seen the most of that right now in country music. I have seen bravery and boldness and full-throatedness in popular culture mostly right now from country music, whether or not that's Jason Aldean or Lee Brice or George Strait and Alan Jackson. I feel like that has been a leading voice in this when it comes to pop culture, but I agree with you. That voice, essentially what you're saying, needs to be emboldened, and Pink's voice needs to feel fear.
Right, and I think that can happen because of the legitimate efforts of individuals. There's a concept in sociology called the preference cascade, and the only way that a preference cascade can happen is if people can hear each other. And I think what we saw yesterday, what we're seeing with all the country stars, just like you mentioned, is an example of people being able to hear what I feel and what I think is okay, and that's good. My hope is that Christian leaders can act the exact same way, can take a page out of Lee Brice's handbook. That's my hope, and I think that, again, we're headed in that direction. Anybody who's still trying to both sides of this thing will be left behind.
All right. Really good stuff as always. Wade Stotts, the host of The Wade Show with Wade. Check him out on all the same platforms we talk about, whether or not it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Rumble, wherever Wade is, go check him out. Thank you, Wade.
Thank you, Will.
We're talking a lot about society imploding. How do you protect a society from imploding? Now, implosion and internal threats are what makes you weak to external threats. Victor Davis Hanson's book is out in paperback. It's called The End of Everything, How Wars Descend into Annihilation. And he looks at 4 civilizations annihilated. What does that mean for us in the U.S.? Victor Davis Hanson, next on Will Cain Country. Sorry, boss. No work getting done from 12 to 1, Monday through Thursday, says Thomas Edward Brady on YouTube. Tell him, Thomas, it's lunch break with the Willisha. Kim7566FL says, LOL, Willisha. I love it. It is Will Cain Country, streaming live at the Will Cain Country YouTube channel. Jump into that comment section. We're here every Monday through Thursday, so if you bookmark it, you join us live, you jump into the comments, we bring you into the show. That's what I'm going to do in just a little bit. We're going to bring you into the show because, on a lighter note, got to bring the boys tinfoil and two-a-days in on this, maybe Ed and Scott. Did you know there's a new #1 beer in America? Did you even know what the previous #1 beer was? Do you know what the #1 beer in America is, Ed? Do you know what it was? He got half of that answer correct. He knows what the #1 beer is today. He doesn't have a microphone, so you can't hear him. But he missed on what was the #1 beer. He said it was Bud Light. Nobody's drinking that. Everybody knows what Bud Light does to you, Ed. Everybody knows.
That's wrong, Will. That's wrong.
What's wrong? I mean, what's wrong? Everybody knows what happens when you drink Bud Light. We're going to get to that in a little bit here when you jump into the Willisha on Will Cain Country. But joining me now is the author of The End of Everything, How Wars Descend into Annihilation. It's out now in paperback, and he is a deep thinker we love talking about. We have a little extended time to do so today. It's Victor Davis Hanson. What's up, Victor?
Not much. Good to be with you, Will.
When you walk through the world, do people call you Victor? Do they call you Vic? Do they call you VDH? You know that's what we call you behind the scenes. Who'd you book? We got VDH. So what do your friends and your neighbors call you, Victor?
They call me Victor, but when I see a particular person at an airport, and she's usually over the age of 65, if I could be so bold, white, well-dressed, with a scowl on her face, and then she targets me and comes close to me and then gives me a lecture about you're doing bad things. And usually it's on the bi-coastal airports. So that's the only person that I fear in the world.
That person you just described, by the way, one thing you can take a little bit of solace in is clearly that person is watching you on Fox or finding your columns and books. And so they've invested a lot of time in getting to know Victor.
They seem to,
This idea, the end of everything, how wars descend into annihilation. I want to start here, Victor, because I think it's a little bit counter-historical, counterfactual, a little bit arguing from the exception. Not to say that you're wrong, but that's not the way most societies fail, is it? I mean, most societies
it's
die
not. It's
long,
very rare.
Slow deaths.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and they lose wars. I mean, Germany and Japan are back, but the idea that an entire society's language, culture, would just be wiped out, it happens. And you hit on it when you said internal decline. And it's amazing across time and space how close classical Thebes or Carthage or Constantinople or Tenochtitlan were. They all had the same symptoms. They had a grandiose view of themselves. They were reactionary. They thought that they were still running their territory, the world, or their continent, or they didn't realize that there were certain things that were going on in their society. One of them was decreased fertility. Another was they didn't defend themselves. Their defenses were not up to snuff, so to speak, as they had been in the past. They counted on allies. That was really fatal. They kept thinking, we're popular, we have allies, and most allies make a cost to benefit analysis, whether they're going to help somebody or not. And if the person they're going to help is weak, they're not going to risk anything. But they were living on nostalgia. It was very tragic because they were kind of deluded. And the people who wiped them out were not, as you might think, barbarians coming across the Danube or something. They were sophisticated. Alexander the Great, student of Aristotle, Scipio Africanus, he was a patron of the arts. Cortez was a very literate man that destroyed the Aztecs. So I think that's another myth, that we think that the most dangerous people in the world are those who have pretensions to intellectualism or knowledge or erudition.
So the four you've pointed to in the book primarily are, and you just alluded to several of them. It is Cortez and the Spanish annihilating the Aztecs. It is Rome annihilating Carthage. It's Alexander the Great annihilating Thebes. And it's the Ottoman Empire annihilating Constantinople. Let's do this. Can you define annihilation?
Yeah. It's different than defeating. It's even different than unconditional surrender. It's an attempt to erase an entire culture. So there is no, after Scipio, to give you that example, there is no Carthaginian language that's concentrated. There's remnants. There is no deity called Baal. That is wiped out. There is no physical Carthage. The Romans will rebuild it about 100 years later, but it'll be a Roman city. So it's an effort to get rid of the culture, the language, the religion, and even the people, either by mass enslavement, mass execution, or forced intermarriage with people. So Carthage ceased to exist as a culture. And today when you go into North Africa, the people there will be descendants of Arabs that came in the 7th or 8th century, but it's very hard to find Berbers that can trace their Punic. Same thing in southern Mexico. There are people who still speak Nahuatl, but it's a dispersed culture. And there is no Aztec. I mean, I live in a predominantly Mexican-American town in the Central Valley, and I do know people who will still reference Aztec religion or medicines, but it's all isolated. There's no central Aztec culture. It was wiped out in the 16th century. Quickly, too. Quickly, in a matter of 3 years.
Annihilation in a matter of 3 years. Why? Why did these leaders, be it Alexander the Great or Cortez, choose something that is not the norm historically? As you point out, you know, the Germans are still here, the Japanese are still here. Most wars end in some type of colonization or simply turning it back over to a weakened version of the government that existed before. Why did these leaders choose annihilation?
There were 2 or 3 reasons. One is they had a history of animosity, of repeated wars. Carthage had fought Rome twice before. That Constantinople for 1,000 years had been in Asia, and for the last 700-800 years, Islam was always covetous of this beautiful city and this strategic location, on and on. So there was a prior history of animosity, and Cortez had tried to reason with the Aztecs. He tried to fight them, and he was defeated the first time. So there was an idea there was no settlement. It had to be an existential war. The other thing was they did it because they had the ability to. They had enormous military advantages. And 3, the areas that they were targeting were all strategically located, rich. So Mexico City was considered by Cortez on the lake of Tenochtitlan as an ideal place to make a new capital for New Spain. Carthage was on one of the few good harbors in North Africa. It was right across from Rome, and the Romans felt this would be a wonderful place to spread Romanism into North Africa. And of course, Constantinople was on the Bosphorus. And the last 100 years, the sultans had said that it's in decline, we've got to take it. And then finally, they all had very substantial fortifications. That's something that people don't talk about, but it created a defensive mentality. The greatest walls in the ancient world were at Constantinople. They were just so formidable that nobody thought you could ever take them. But the city that once had 1 million people only had about 55,000 when it was taken. So they relied on defensive fortifications and natural terrain rather than offense and taking the war to the enemy. And so it was very uncanny how similar they were. And the epilogue, I try to talk about the United States, that is our fertility declining? Do we still think we're the power we were at Korea or World War II? Have we won a war since Korea? Did we win? I mean, that was kind of a deadlock. Why don't we win wars? Are we a united people? There were a lot of divisions within these cities as well. And do we have existential enemies that we don't understand? We feel that we look at the Chinese and say they don't really want to take the United States. We can work with the Chinese. They're not antithetical to us. Let's let in 600,000 Chinese students. Stuff like that naivete is very common.
I want to spin it forward, Victor, into application to the United States. But before I do, I do want to ask you about, it seems to me that the technological or warfare advantage would be massive in the decision process of how far to take you toward annihilation. In other words, it's not simply the moral grace of God that keeps the victor from annihilating, it's ability. And that ability dictated by military might and in no small part, I would imagine, by technological advantage. In other words, you know, we often do the cost-benefit analysis. Why do we fight Vietnam or Afghanistan with one arm behind our back? Because in part, we don't want to go be the conquerors and take on the cost of dominating that society. We do have that technological advantage. We have that ability, but we don't, because we have both a moral calculus and we run this cost-benefit analysis. So it seems to me, when you're looking outside at existential threats, you have to start with who actually even has the ability to dominate and annihilate.
Yeah, all of them did. Cortez never had at any one time more than 2,500 men. And he conquered an empire that had 4 million people and an army of 250,000. But what did he have that they didn't have? He had arquebuses, an early form of firearms. He had huge Mastiff dogs. He had Toledo steel armor and blades and cannon and crossbows that were reinforced with steel. So he had these battles are almost incomprehensible, where 100 100 conquistadors are killed, and they killed 50,000 people. And yet it's documented. The same thing with the Romans, that the Carthaginians had no idea that a Roman army would land at Utica with 90,000. That was almost the size of D-Day on the first day. But Romans had that ability to transport an entire army, and then they were masters of siegecraft. And you could argue that, unfortunately for the Thebans, they believed that they were still into the mode of classical Greek warfare and not the Macedonians of Philip II and Alexander the Great, because they were the masters of siegecraft and took the city. The seven-gated Thebes was mythically renowned for never being conquered, and Alexander took it in 24 hours. And then he butchered everybody. That was pretty much what happened. When they took the city, they butchered people, everybody inside, or enslaved them. So yeah, I think technological and tactical and strategic advantages were necessary, and they were not appreciated by the people who were targeted. They kept saying, you know what, we've been here so long that no one would dare do this, and even if they dared do this, they wouldn't annihilate us. That's beyond, these people are civilizational. They're not pre-civilizational.
Hubris. It reminds me, I'm watching, by the way, Chief of War. It's a show on Apple TV starring Jason Momoa. It's about the conquering of the Hawaiian Islands by King Kamehameha, and it just culminated in the final battle of the first season, where Kamehameha's forces had gotten guns from Westerners, and the other side was incredibly hubristic. Oh, we're gonna win. We've got the gods on our side. We've got the numbers. We've got all these things, and just marched themselves into annihilation because Kamehameha's forces had guns, and that was the difference. And you talk about all those qualities: hubris, even the belief that your gods will protect you, or whatever it may be. So now let's spin this forward, like looking at the United States and our future. First, before we talk about internal problems, is there an external threat that represents the potential for annihilation? I mean, I don't think we have the most nukes. I think Russia has the most nukes, but we have the most technologically advanced, I believe, delivery systems for nukes and so forth. Or even China. I mean, at best they can hope for is being on par with us. I mean, I do know that there are war games. You know, China wins most of the simulated war games, even from DOD or Department of War. But do you see that ability on the world stage? The ability of someone else to annihilate the U.S.?
I don't see it now, but I look more importantly at the rate of growth. So China's strategic doctrine is that it feels in the last 10 years it can prohibit the United States from entering the South China Sea. I think it can in a time of war. But does it have a blue water navy? Can it project power into the Caribbean? No, it cannot yet. Does it want to? Yes. If you look at its new bomber, or you look at its new tank, or you look at its new aircraft carrier, it's uncanny. You could just take the American model for that and put it right next to it. It looks almost the same. And when we have 600,000 students projected to come to the United States, or they're buying farmland near strategic places, or what we saw with the COVID, we still haven't got an explanation from the Chinese government who birthed it. We think we know it came out of the lab, but why was it birthed? Why were they allowing people to fly to New York or Washington or San Francisco for 12 days and yet not letting anybody fly out of Wuhan that was infected? So China's in a whole different category than Russia. It's a completely totalitarian. Putin is a dictatorial tyrant, but this is a totalitarian system that mind controls everybody, and they have 1.4 billion people, and they think they can combine market capitalism with this totalitarianism and still be competitive. And they're also predatory on U.S. and European technology, and we're very naive. They've got the most brilliant propaganda that I've ever seen, because as soon as you start criticizing them, they bring up the yellow peril or the Japanese internment and say, we are kind of a DEI people and you people have a history of racism. We saw that during COVID when they played the victim. And they understand the Western mind far better than the Russians, and how to get to it. And make it feel that they owe China something, or they always talk about, well, we lost 15 million people in World War II. You were on the side of the fascists. You're now on the side of the fascists. World War II still continues, and yet you're on the Japanese side and the German side. We're on the Russian side and the people who were victims of World War II. So we should never discount them. They're very capable people.
Do you now to the internal conditions, which are really on display in America right now? I mean, we just spent 45 minutes before we talked to you talking about like how divided are we actually? It feels very, very, very divided. It does feel like the worst of the worst on the other side of this division, to me, are I don't want to say fringe, because after Charlie Kirk was assassinated and the celebrations I saw online, it made me really, it makes you question your neighbor. That's what it does. It makes you question your neighbor. Like, how much is Ilhan Omar, Jasmine Crockett representative of a divide in the United States? Or do they represent an insane 10%, whatever the number may be? But what do you think about the internal conditions of America that set the stage for, I don't know if we should go all the way to annihilation, but for fall?
Yeah, I'm worried about it. If you were to take the 1992 Bill Clinton Democratic Convention platform, or the 96 when they ran against Bush and Dole, and you gave it to the average Democrat today, they would think that was fascist. It called for trying teens as adults, it tried to balance the budget, close the border, deportation. So that party is unrecognizable now. It's controlled, I guess you could use the French Revolutionary term, by Jacobins, people who believe that any means are necessary to get their end of forced or mandated equality of result. So the other problem is that we have two paradigms in the United States. I guess you could call them red and blue. And we know now that the blue model doesn't work, because if you look at the top 10 states in fertility, they're all right on board at 2.0. And those are all red. If you look at the bottom 10, they're down to 1.2 and 1.3. If you look at budgets and unsustainable entitlements, pensions, it's the blue state. If you look at taxation, zoning, and then most importantly, 4 to 5 million people are leaving these blue enclaves to red. And it's not just politics, it's the quality of life. So whatever they believe, radical environmentalism, radical DEI, radical critical race theory, it doesn't work. And it's suicidal and nihilistic. And everybody seems to know that. And the more that is transparent to them, as we see with Governor Pitzer, or here in California with Governor Newsom, they will not discuss the high taxes, the high energy, the high gas. They just won't do it. What happened in the Palisades fire? No. What they double down on this radical ideology that really is a death cult, because it leads to people not getting married, not having a nuclear family, not having 2 or 3 children, and then going to these universities that do not teach people. You can see that with Charlie Kirk. He was far better educated as an autodidact than this people I see at Stanford every day. So that model in every aspect of it is not working, and yet they're getting angrier and angrier and angrier about their own failures, and they feel that they're losing control of the people, and they saw that with the memorial service, and their reaction is, well, we control the institutions. We have K through 12, the university, the media, we have foundations, we have this deep state bureaucracy, and even that is no longer, and they're losing power. So that's why you see all this hateful rhetoric, these videos where Hakeem Jeffries takes a bat, or they have kickboxing, or they use the F word all the time, or the SHI. It's just a angry, desperate reflection that they have lost the White House, the Congress, the Supreme Court, and the people, and they're 30, 70, 60, 40 on the issues. And so they are the ones that are prompting the anger. And so far, the red state conservative traditionalists are slowly, incrementally gaining. They're going to gain seats in the next census. Their families are bigger. They're happier people. We all know that. But that doesn't mean that these other people, like the Jacobins, won't try to force the issue. And I think they're trying to force the issue rhetorically now. And I think they're very dangerous people. I really do. And we have to find some way to persuade them that this model that they've embraced is suicidal. Here in California, the only hope is that the majority are Hispanics, about 45% of the population, and they nationwide voted, as you know, about 49, and Hispanic males were 55% for Trump. So they look at this and they say, we didn't come to the United States to pay the highest energy or to pay the highest gas or to be regulated to death or be told that we have to have biological males with our daughters in a locker room. And that's just new. That's kind of, and the left hasn't processed that yet. But one of the good things that's happening with the MAGA people is that they are substituting race for class. They're saying to the black truck driver, the Mexican-American electrician, the white manufacturer in a factory, you guys all have much more in common than you do differences, because you are sort of the people that globalization, offshoring, outsourcing left behind, muscular labor. These administrations had not paid attention to you, and the elites of each one of your tribe does not care about you. And left-wing elites do not care about people, white elites in Palestine. Al Sharpton does not care about crime in the inner city, and the Hispanic leadership does not care about what illegal immigration does to people in Fresno County or in the Rio Grande Valley. So that's hopeful that Trump has created a class consciousness among the middle class. I never thought I'd see that in my lifetime with a Republican.
Well, these people, Victor, that you described a moment ago, who bought into this failed system, or the ones that advocate for the failed system, you said they need to be persuaded. Can they be persuaded, or do we need to look at what happened to the Jacobins? What does history tell us? Where did they go? Where are the Jacobins?
I don't know if I want to go there or not, but one day Robespierre was on top of the world and was guillotined left and right, and one day the Thermidors said, that's it. And so they stormed the Jacobin house. They marched the ringleaders of the guillotine. They said, you're welcome to blow your brains out. He tried to. It blew his jaw off, and then they guillotined them all. And then the next thing we knew, within 2 years, we had the Directory of the Consulate on Napoleon. So they went a little, the counter-revolution went a little hard. But we have to persuade them. And if you can't persuade them, you have to make sure legally, morally, that they're not in power. So one of the things that I think is really important from the tragic death, I don't like to use that word tragic death, because it wasn't just an accident or fate. It was an act of evil that killed Charlie Kirk at his prime, is that everybody needs to go out and register and vote in the midterm. That would be the biggest tribute to them if they could reverse this historical reality that an administration loses the Congress in the first midterm, and that's what it will be. And I think they can stop that and actually pick up seats. But if you can isolate them politically, it's kind of like, maybe I'm so old, but in '68, Hubert Humphrey almost beat Nixon. He was a moderate compared to what we see today. The Democratic Party said, oh, he was too conservative. We're going to go full left wing, and they got George McGovern in '72, and he got washed out, and they lost 20 of the next 24 years. They did not control the White House. And they had Reagan and Bush for 12, and then W for 4, and then that was pretty much because of what they had done. And then they came up with this idea, we can't have a Democrat unless he has a Southern accent. We can't run them. We have to have a Jimmy Carter or LBJ or Al Gore or Bill Clinton, because they don't trust us. And that's a sign that we're moderate. And yet, but they've been there before and they've changed. McGovern led to Clinton, and then that led to Barack Obama feigning or simulating that he was not quite what happened under the Biden administration. That was the most naked example of what Jacobins or hyper-revolutionaries can do when they seized control of that Biden government and used him as a waxen effigy to push through this nihilistic agenda we witnessed.
Well, Yeah, we don't want to go full counter revolution. I agree. No guillotine, but these people do need to be. I don't think they can be persuaded. So they need to be marginalized. And you said legally and morally. Before we face something like Victor's written about, The End of Everything, How We Descend into Annihilation. It's out on paperback now. Victor, it's always great to see you, especially long form. Thanks for being with us here today.
Thank you, Will, for having me.
You bet. I hope to see you again soon. There he goes, VDH. Or as the ladies in the airport who are well-to-do and well-dressed, 65-year-old white ladies say, Victor, what are you doing to America? Hey, over on YouTube with the Willisha, Johnny Steffen says, this is the problem. Where's the curiosity to find out what Charlie lived for and spoke about? There is no curiosity. They already have their bubble. They already have their confirmation. Mike Mitchell says, what happened to Charlie was bad and hateful. No one should be killed for their opinion, but please stop acting like he's MLK or JFK. I would challenge you on something, Mike. There's some interesting videos out there. I would just challenge you to, if you insist on resisting the deification of Charlie Kirk, revisit the deification of some of those men. Find out if MLK lived the life personally that he promised, that he publicly espoused. And then I would challenge you to go one step further. Find out if Charlie Kirk lived what he suggested. Get back to us, Mike Mitchell. Paul Raymond says, it's very easy to do little research and educate yourself on what Charlie stood for and communicated to the masses. Why just lie and gaslight? We know the truth. I think more and more people, Paul, do know the truth. All right, there is a brand new beer in America. Number one. I'm very disappointed in Ed, who's here in Dallas with me, because he didn't know the number one beer in America. And Ed is Mexican, or at least so he says. The whitest Mexican dude you've ever met. But he is Mexican. The number one beer in America was, until very, very recently, Modelo.
Wow.
Modelo had supplanted Bud Light during the trans controversy. Bud Light was number one until everybody started thinking of it as, a trans cocktail.
Not Corona?
And no, Modelo. And by the way, that bears out. I mean, you go somewhere and dudes are drinking Modelos, not Coronas. I mean, I like a Modelo. Modelo's good. Corona's good for one beer. And I like a Corona, but like on the second or third, you're like,
beer.
This flavor. But Modelo's nice. Got the little gold, aluminum wrapper. You feel fancy. Like when you get a Miller High Life. It's a champagne of beers day, boys. Where's my tuxedo? That's Miller High Life. That's what Modelo gives you a little bit, but it priced on a normal budget. The little gold. Tell me you don't like the gold wrapper on a Modelo. Everybody loves the little gold wrapper.
It's a little pretentious. Calm down.
You're
just a beer.
It's not pretentious. It's luxurious.
You're not champagne. Calm down.
It's luxurious. And by the way, Miller High Life, a little bit like Corona. Good for one. By number 3, you're like, is this the flavor that I want in my mouth?
Land
all day
shark
long?
too.
I'm not familiar. I don't think I've had a land shark. But no longer now. And this bears out as well. I feel like every weekend for the past 3 weeks, I've been at a football game. This weekend, it was TCU SMU. And, I'm mostly a Miller Lite, Coors Light guy. I'd say I'm Miller Lite number 1, Coors Light number 2.
Sponsor the
Unless
show.
Modelo's in the mix and I'm feeling luxury. But the bartender in Fort Worth was pushing the new number 1 beer on me. And I mean, he really was pushing it too. He was telling me how great it was. And it's the new number 1. It is Michelob Ultra. Michelob Ultra. The top beer in America.
You mean water?
And Michelob Ultra has gone through a transformation. When it first came out, it kind of felt like a chick's beer. Because it was it zero carb? Is that what the deal is with it? It's something like a zero carb beer.
Yeah.
It had low carb, low calorie, but no longer. I see dudes choosing the Michelob Ultra a lot these days.
Lame.
So,
that's like a CrossFit guys drink that beer. Worried about their physiques.
Okay, so to you boys in New York, okay, you go to the cooler, right? In the cooler, there's Miller Lite, Coors Light, Michelob Ultra, Bud Light. Be honest, Patrick. And you reach in for which one? Which one do you reach for? You don't give me other options. I'm not asking for you to tell me about your IPA. No one cares about your IPA. It's like your fantasy football team. Okay? No one cares about your favorite IPA that you found.
It's heady.
You might as well tell me about James Conner being out for the season. It's going to ruin your fantasy season. I get it. I know. But also, I don't care about your IPA. So which one do you reach for first two-a-days?
I'm brand loyal, have been for years, Miller Lite. That's it. I'll drink other beers, but my go-to Miller Lite. That's it.
Yes. It's got a little more flavor, right?
It does.
It's got a little
96 calories,
more flavor than
3
the
grams
Michelob
of
Ultra
carbs.
Coors Light. Okay. All right, Patrick. All 6'6" of you. You reach way down there into the cooler. 7 foot tall Patrick reaches way down into the cooler and picks. I told you can't go off menu. You can't tell me I don't drink beer.
I just grab whatever's in there.
I only drink
It doesn't really
whiskey.
matter to me.
I'm a man.
Yeah.
What is it? Is it a whiskey?
What?
Are you whiskey? What your
whiskey and vodka?
What is your poison?
Yeah, whiskey and vodka.
Whiskey and what?
Vodka.
Oh yeah.
Do you have like a beer chaser ever?
Yeah.
No.
Vodka, the drink of the real alcoholic.
Yeah. Or the Russian. Either one. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know that real alcoholics drink vodka, right? Like, I don't know if alcoholics start at vodka, but they always end up at vodka. Like, that's where you end up. Like, when you're a serious all-day drinker, you end up with vodka hidden in a cabinet somewhere. That's just how it goes.
Behind the vegetables.
Yeah, at that point, you're getting not like Kettle or Stoli. What is the one you get? Like, what's
Dubra?
the one that, like, Dubra? Is that just like the red,
it's just like
generically
plastic
Russian
bottle.
feeling?
Yeah, plastic bottle.
Plastic bottle,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But beer.
Nah, Patrick, I appreciate a vodka soda. I do appreciate a vodka soda. It's refreshing. I appreciate a Greyhound. That's very refreshing. A Greyhound. You don't know what a Greyhound is?
Greyhound's delicious.
That's when you don't want to be the guy that orders the vodka cranberry. But someday, if you're out of tailgate, and not to be a big advocate for drinking, but you're Saturday college football, and you know how you just get beered out? You just get beered out. Get a Greyhound. It's vodka, grapefruit juice, and I think a little soda. Like a tiny splash of soda to give it a little bubbly, right?
Yep.
It's
Moscow
nice.
Mule's good.
It's real nice.
Yeah.
I love a Moscow
Yeah,
Mule.
Moscow Mule's good, but you don't. That's like a drink you have to start the night. You know what I mean, or start the afternoon.
I don't know what
it's an
night you're having.
afternoonish drink.
So I have a question. How much of this is Michelob getting better versus Modelo losing sales because of immigration reform? Like maybe,
dude,
maybe we're losing some of that.
You're saying
audience.
You're saying there's fewer Mexican dudes in America available to order Modelo?
Just a thought.
You know what?
I think the whites drink
Here's
it.
a theory. I think Modelo. I think the whites. I think it's big with the whites.
Yeah.
I think Modelo is. I'm not even sure it's big with the Mexican dudes.
Yeah.
And I've got one here. I've got Ed. I'm going to make a bet before I get Ed's answer. I think if I go to a backyard Mexican barbecue where they're doing the goat, you're doing the goat, your whole thing, and what do you call that? What do you call the goat that you cook in the ground? You do it. They do it in the ground too. Barbacoa. That's what I'm thinking of, barbacoa. All right, if I go to barbacoa, we're going to have some goat. I don't even know if I've had goat. I've surely had barbacoa. I don't think Modelo is the predominant drink in the cooler. I don't think it is. I think, here's my bet, and you better answer this or you're not a real Mexican. At this point, I have real questions about you. I'm going to say it's Tecate. I think Tecate is the major beer in the cooler.
I think Corona.
No? It's definitely not Corona.
I think it's Corona.
Hold on. It's what, Scott? It's Dos Equis. Good. It's Dos Equis or Tecate. One of the two. I'm in the right vein, right?
Yeah. So it's Dos Equis.
Dos Equis.
And then the bougie Mexicans are drinking
Okay, did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
It is Dos Equis, Modelo, and the bougie Mexicans are drinking Corona Premier. That's what Ed says. Okay. What about a Sol? I like a Sol.
Those are good.
Sol is like, that's the beach beer when you realize that it's actually better than Corona. Am I wrong? Exactly. Beach atmosphere or fishing, it's Sol or Pacifico. Those are the two. But Sol's got the clear bottle. And there's something about the clear bottle that's like, oh, it's daytime.
Yeah, and then if you...
Pacifico's in the dark bottle.
Funerals, right?
Yeah?
Indio.
I don't know that beer.
Tecate.
At funerals.
Carta Blanca and Indio.
Indio at funerals.
Last time I was in Dallas, I got a Tecate, and they put salt around the rim with a lime. It was delicious. It made me a fan.
I imagine they put tahine.
Or
They probably
tahine.
put tahine. Was it salt or tahine?
It was tahine.
Yeah.
It was salty.
I'm not big on Tecate, by the way.
Really?
It's not. It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Dos Equis is okay too. It's just okay.
What about
yeah,
Labatt?
It's true, Ed.
You like
Go
Labatt?
Miller Lite. America.
Canadian?
That's Canadian.
I know.
I know nothing about Canada. I've never been to Canada. My life didn't go north. I spent those times in New York. I didn't drink. What is it? Labatt?
Labatt Blue.
Labatt? No, don't. No, don't have a northern connection. I don't. I'd like to go to Canada. Never been.
It was nice. They have some opinions about us.
So do the Mexicans.
Yeah.
But you know what I care about? The opinion of America. All right, and America loves Michelob Ultra. That's going to do it for us today here on Will Cain Country. Make sure you subscribe. Bookmark, follow Spotify and Apple. We'll see you again next time.